Okay, so maybe I'm stealing Ava's brand just a smidgen in this video, but you know what? It's relevant, so consider it stolen. What is she gonna do about it? Fire me? Hello, I'm Jenna, and today you're watching another WWM Productions video, and today I'm talking about some media that I've been consuming recently-ish, because I know Ava generally does the videos where she talks about the recent shows that she's binge-watched, but look, I've watched some things and I'm going to talk about them. I have 3 things I wish to talk about in this video. 2 TV shows and 1 movie that I'm going to talk about. I'll get the TV shows out of the way first, and this is like the oldest of the things. It's technically not super recent, but oh well. I've been meaning to watch it for a while. It was the 2nd season of The Umbrella Academy, and for anyone who's unfamiliar with the show, it follows this group of estranged adopted siblings who were all born on the same day under unique circumstances, who were adopted by this one eccentric man who had a dream of turning them into a team of superheroes, and they only reunite once their father dies for his funeral. In the 2nd season, follows them going back in time to the mid-60s to try and prevent the end of the world and the apocalypse. This show, I really like it for the fact that it doesn't do the things that you want it to do, because it's definitely a family dramedy, and you really expect there to be certain beats for the story to follow, but the writers of this show kind of understand that, and they know what you're thinking, and they kind of deny you that, or deny it in the standard sets, and I think that's really great, because do I want to see this family getting along like normal, and seeing all of these different pre-existing beats that we could see of them, like bonding more, or reconciling differences, or any of that? Sure. But I really appreciate the fact that this show does something different and does something new and kind of takes our expectations and flips them on their head. It's definitely an interesting new-ish addition to the kind of new wave superhero canon we have right now beyond Marvel and DC. And again, I really appreciate this show. It's so different from everything else, and it definitely feels very fresh to me. I really love all the characters, and all of the actors do a great job of bringing these very individual and unique people to screen, and just there's so much going on in a season that one of my criticisms, I guess, would be that sometimes it doesn't feel like everything is coming together, or that things kind of have to be pushed in a direction, and that I just wish it felt a little more grounded in the story it was telling, because you have all these different people who love each other in a sense, but also they technically don't have to like each other. It's almost that type of trope. So they're all doing their own things, and of course it all comes together at the end to bring everything together, but I kind of just wish it felt a little more like a cohesive whole rather than just everybody going out and then occasionally meeting back up, but then everybody going out again. Like, I wish there was a little more togetherness, if that makes any sense, because I really like the family dynamic when they all come together. But then at the same time I have that thought, it's really great to kind of see it like right at the end, them all coming together. So, I don't know, I'm in the middle of what I really wanted them to do. So, I wish there was just a compromise between those two things. I really like the time travel dynamic. I really love how they expand on things we already know, and each character has their own individual plotline and character arc that I think really fits them and says a lot without having to really stretch out the runtime of this show. So overall, I think The Umbrella Academy is just a really well done quality show. It's quirky, it's really not like many other things that I've seen. So if you're looking for a unique show, I, for one, am very excited for the 3rd season, because as always, this show is always pushing new things, and it always has me on the edge of my seat wondering, okay, what are they possibly going to do next? This next one wasn't something that was on my radar. I knew this show existed in the same plane as me, but I didn't really hear anything about it until suddenly it just exploded on my Instagram for some reason, and that show was Young Royals. So I rewarded myself one night by being like, you know what, Jenna, we're gonna start a show. So I put on the first episode, and I fell head over heels. I had a great time watching it. It was a time. So I stayed up stupid late that night watching like most of the first season, and then I woke up and then I finished it the next day, which was a thing that I did. Young Royals is essentially follows this Prince of Sweden who gets into a fight, and it's broadcast on the internet, so to kind of save face and make up for it, he gets sent off to this boarding school. And by the way, the show is Sweden. It follows him as he goes to boarding school and the people that he meets, and how, and the main thing of this show is balancing like love and duty, and of course he meets a boy there and he falls in love, and it's just this whole thing. The show was very stressful. I didn't realize how stressful this show would be, and then I started watching it and I was like, no, it is too late for me to be this stressed about a TV show. But again, I just really enjoyed it. Definitely like a teen drama show, but also it was very different, and it definitely could have fallen more into the tropes that you would regularly see in kind of these like teen dramas, especially like a Netflix teen, but it definitely didn't fall into the same pitfalls that I think a lot of other shows can fall into that make them not as good. This was definitely unique, and it definitely had its own style that I was not expecting. It definitely, I don't know, I just had a really nice time watching it. I can't explain why. I wasn't sure if I would like it. I really enjoyed the queer representation in this show. I think that definitely sets it apart as well. And one of the complaints I had was that we had to follow some of the other characters instead of following our main character, Wilhelm. And I can see why they established these other characters. They did function within the show fairly well, but at the same time, there's our storylines that we've already seen bits and pieces of in other shows, and they were far from the actual emotional core of the show, but yet they relied on them so much where, like, they'd actually given us, like, the main character and, like, the main romance. I think this show would have been a little bit stronger, because that ultimately was the thing that I wanted to know the most about. And I walked away from the show wanting to know more about my actual main character. Overall, like, I was an emotional wreck at the end. I'm just saying, this show, it definitely packs a punch. If Netflix doesn't give it a season 2, then I don't know what is going to happen. People are probably going to be very vocal about that. People are very passionate about this show. So, I really enjoyed it. I mean, it was very emotional and sweet, and yes, it was stressful, but also in the sense that, like, most teen shows are, because people don't make good decisions when they're adolescents. That's just a fact, and this show definitely is not an exception. And I think that was fairly realistic of it, and just, it was really great, and I really liked how there were things when I was going into it like, oh, I'm gonna have to deal with all these things that, like, I've seen in other shows where, like, this kind of, like, rich and kind of elite person gets sent off to this, like, place, but I had my expectations subverted, and I just was really happy about that, and I was able to enjoy this show, and I really liked how the romance was not straight. That was fantastic. We need more queer representation in shows, especially when it follows it as the main romance, because I think that that's pretty cool. And again, the overall, like, conflict, well, the overall thematic conflict of love and duty, I think, was also fairly well done, and overall, it was just a really well-made show. And if you're someone who's kind of looking at it like, oh, I don't know if I'll like it, I think you definitely will. Like, if you're having reservations about it, I think you should definitely put on the first episode and watch. The third title that I wanted to talk about in this little video was The Mitchells vs. the Machines. I had such a fantastic time. This movie is just a riot in every sense. It follows the Mitchells, a fairly dysfunctional family who all love each other but are definitely not very good at communicating all of the time, and the movie follows in particular the main character Katie, who is going off to college and she feels that her family just doesn't really understand her. She's very artistic and she wants to make movies, and she's been making movies on YouTube, and especially her father, he doesn't really see things her way, and he's not always the best at trying to see and understand her. So when she's going off to college, she's like, I'm going to see my people and I'm never coming back home because they don't understand me. And her parents decide that if they're going to try and reconcile this relationship, they are going to go on a road trip to drop her off to college. But while on this road trip, there is a machine takeover where all technology kind of turns against people, and they're planning to just shoot them into space with free Wi-Fi though. So the Mitchells become the last free humans on Earth, and they go off to try and save humanity. But of course, they're the Mitchells. They don't do really anything normal because they're not a normal family. And this movie it was just so fun. Like, I haven't seen an animated movie that was this originally animated and this funny and just dynamic in a very, very long time. And I'm not saying it was like the best animated movie I've seen, because I've seen some good ones recently, but this is definitely up there. I had so much fun watching this movie, and I just was blown away because Sony is like really making a comeback with the movies they're making, and the success of the really amazing animation style of Into the Spider-Verse kind of rubbed off on this movie, I believe, but it was also original in its own sense that it wasn't directly like that movie, because nothing will ever be like that movie ever, but it definitely was its own very unique and colorful style that I just loved watching and looking at. And while it's definitely bordering over the top in a lot, I think at the same time, when it's at its most hectic and crazy, it definitely feels earned, and the things that are happening story-wise and plot-wise on screen with that style definitely fits the tone of the movie overall. So I think it's balanced really well, so you're not watching it and like, oh my god, I need to go take a break. Like, no, it's good. And I just really loved it, and all of the character designs are great, and all of the environments, all of that was just super fantastic. And I wanted to just watch it again to really like analyze it and piece it apart, and it was just so great. The animation style was just great, and what complemented the fine animation style was the humor. Oh my gosh, the humor in this movie. I was having a ball watching this movie. The humor is on point. You need to watch this movie because you will have such a good time and you will be laughing. Like the humor is so earned. It doesn't resort to like kiddie or bathroom humor. And even if it does, it's like, even then it's not like too overdone. Like, it fits. Like, the humor is definitely for any and all audiences to enjoy. There's something for everyone here, and just this movie is honestly more funny than most of like the comedies that I've seen on this for this channel. Like, honest to goodness, the humor in this movie is so well written that I just was not expecting there to be so many good jokes in this movie, but then lo and behold, fantastic. I was sitting here trying not to laugh because by the end of this movie it was kind of late, and I was just like, this is so good though, I want to laugh at it. And more than that, while this movie is technically very great, it also tells just a very good story. Originally, people kind of gave it flack because it was originally called Connected, and people were like, oh, it's just another one of those lame one-word titles. So I'm really glad that they changed it to The Mitchells vs. the Machines, because also it doesn't really give away the actual theme of the story as well, because this movie is very much a movie about communication and connections, in particular the connection of this family and them trying to learn to communicate better. I can be very touch and go with like my family dynamics in movies and whether or not I can actually enjoy it, and this one I definitely did. I think the Mitchells were really well written because they very much stressed the fact, the writers, that they love each other. It's just that sometimes they're not very good at showing that. And I think they really did a great job of like, this is a reasonable place for them to start and this is a reasonable place for them to end. And I just really loved watching the story develop and all of their relationships among each other and all of their different discussions they had. Like, they had a really great sibling relationship and the parents had a really great relationship, and just, it was just really great to see all of them interacting with each other and learning about each other and trying to figure things out in a reasonable and regular way, but also not, it wasn't regular because this family is not regular, and just overall all of its themes really great. Good movie. Had a good time. I'm going to try and give things a number rating. So, The Umbrella Academy, I think I'm going to give it a 7.5. I think that's pretty reasonable. I mean, a 7 is a C. That's a passing grade. Kind of want to give it an 8, but at the same time I kind of don't, because I wish I felt more about the show, because I think it's really great, but for whatever reason, there was just something holding me back from being like really, really invested in it. I don't know why. That may have just been me. The fact that I kind of just watched it and it was the second season out of nowhere. But again, a 7.5 isn't a bad score, so I will always be a recommender of The Umbrella Academy because it's a good show. Then Young Royals, I think I'm going to give it 8.5 because it definitely had some flaws, I think, and there are some things I didn't really like and weren't really my personal favorite, and all of these ratings are essentially like my subjective thoughts with a little bit of like actual attempts at artistic criticism, because I don't know why not. So I think that's what I'm going to give that, because overall I had a really great time watching it and it was just my heart. And The Mitchells vs. the Machines, I'm going to give a 9 because it was that good. It's just not a 10 because of like maybe some things here and there, and it just didn't feel like a 10 out of 10 for me. I don't really give 10 out of 10s, but anyway, all good stuff. You should check them out if any of this interested you, or you can probably just Google them. That works too. With that, I'm going to leave this video off there. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching it and listening to me ramble about such things. And with that, we have our podcast that uploads generally every week here, and you can also follow it on Spotify or a bunch of other places. Our Instagram is under construction. We're working on redoing it. And we have a TikTok. That's the thing. Yeah, Ava's going to upload a video next week. No idea what that will be, but it should be fun. Thank you so much for watching, and with that, I leave you to the rest of your day. Goodbye.